Well, you've got to remember that the two countries considered themselves as arch enemies, really, for over a century. I mean, since the Franco-Prussian War, before really, and
And then two world wars. Yeah.
and then two. Yes, let's not mention the two world wars, and in 1963. West Germany, as it was still a quite wounded place. Yeah, it had lost the war quite dramatically. Its economy was getting strong, thanks to American assistance and other things, and the balance of power. That's to say, a rather strutting World War II co-victor France, and the defeated Germany. Was coming out of kilter a little bit. And it was very important for de Gaulle to lead the European process, to shackle Germany as far as he could. So the whole thing wasn't born out of some kind of friendship, wave of friendship and benign, cuddly, let's make up and all these kind of things. It was a very formal maneuver by de Gaulle, which was accepted by Adenauer as the price of regaining West German sovereignty, because at that time there were still, French troops, American troops, British troops across Western Germany, loads of them, tens of thousands of them. A lot of decisions had to be made in, together with the occupying authorities. And basically, Adenauer wanted to lead Germany into a more or less sovereign statehood, and he used France to help him along the way. But what you do find is that every anniversary of the Élysée Treaty, and now we have the 60th, it highlights the huge differences between the two cultures and the two methods of state management, their two competing ideas of what Europe should be, their views of America and everything else. And frankly, it's an embarrassing moment. And you'll find that the celebrations today will be actually pretty low key because they're embarrassed a little bit about all of this.
They're not actually doing it at the Élysée, are they? They're doing it at the Sorbonne.
Sorbonne, yeah. I mean, what's happened? They set up a system then, 60 years ago, whereby, and it's sort of evolved because they had nothing else to say to each other for a long time. But for example, the whole French cabinet would come over to Germany and meet together with the German cabinet, and vice versa. Well, can you imagine us doing that with any other country in the world? We just wouldn't.
Well, we did do it with France in the Tony Blair years.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's take those weird anomalies aside. And you would have school exchanges and so on, and these would always go wrong. The French would be really, unpleasant to the German kids, and all sorts of things went wrong. And so, and in the end, each departmental head of the German government anyway, and I assume the French, had to, 6 months ahead of their annual co-cabinet summit, would have to draw up proposals, which were completely fake. Yeah, so hence the emptiness. So I'm a bit of a skeptic that there is a unique Franco-German relationship.
Well, yeah, I mean, you, not just you, our colleague Peter Conradi in the Sunday Times today, writing about this, points out that it was de Gaulle who kissed Adenauer, who looked somewhat reluctant on that occasion. Now, I don't think there are going to be kisses between Scholz and Macron today. But, I mean, the case, isn't it, really, that the French feel more needy? I mean, a French ambassador once said to me, well, look, we're quite happy being rude about the Brits because we know we can rely on you at the moment. But the Germans, we don't quite trust them. We've got to hug them close. Is that how the relationship is?
Yes. I mean, because there's a certain dysfunctionality, because everybody agrees that European community or European Union should prevent a war happening in Europe. That was the whole point about it, to stop a war. And, hence we had a coal and steel community, which made it impossible really for France or Germany to develop competing arms industries. It was this kind of thing. And now we have a war in Europe, but it's not really involving the French and the Germans, and so that raises all sorts of questions. What does this so-called axis still function? Does it operate? Can it? It never really functioned on a military level, but can one think around that?
But with the question of the Leopard tanks, it does seem that the French, rather more in line with Britain in wanting to help Ukraine militarily than the Germans. Would that be fair?
Well, yes, but I would say this relationship is more about think tanks than tanks. It's kind of drawing up more and more kind of concepts for how Franco-German leadership post-Merkel can be restored in Europe. But on the tanks, it's, the French, frankly, haven't offered. They've offered a sort of armoured, untracked vehicle, which is useful, like a lot of these weapons that are coming or have been promised to the Ukrainians are quite useful. But they don't have what the Ukrainians really want, which is, the kind of firepower that will allow you to change a Russian offensive into an effective Ukrainian offensive. That means really fast, modern tank warfare. And the French don't. The French seem to share Scholz's, although they don't openly say that, they sneer a bit in public. But what they share the idea that actually making Ukraine, or the final scenes of the Ukraine war, into a kind of Battle of Kursk showdown, in which the whole war swivels around an armored tank army that's been supplied by the West. They don't buy that, really. They don't think that that's what it's about. And at root, it's the French don't trust the Germans very much. The Germans are very nervous about all of this for various reasons, various logical, historical reasons. But above all, neither the French nor the Germans really trust the Ukrainians. And this is really the heart of it. And if you've got the Franco-German relationship, communality being based on a mistrust of a country that's under attack, then you're in trouble, really. You're building in all sorts of disruptive elements into diplomacy. If they'd been on one line on Russia, and they were briefly for a while, because they both thought there were negotiations were possible with Putin, and then he went off and did another atrocity somewhere else. So, you can't have, two negatives don't make a positive in this war, and you have two very negative allies.